In 1905, the loudest sound in an American city wasn't an engine. It was 4,000 horses. Here's what a normal day sounded, smelled, and looked like before any of that changed. 5 a.m. The sound before the city wakes. Before anything else happens, there's a smell. It's there before the sound, before the light. A smell that every person living in an American city in 1905 knows so completely they've stopped noticing it. Horse manure. Thousands of pounds of it deposited on the streets every single day, swept by city crews every morning, but never fully gone. In New York alone, the horse population produces enough waste daily to cover an acre of ground a foot deep. Every city in America smells like this. It's just what a city smells like. The first sound is hooves on cobblestone. A milk wagon, somewhere a few streets over. The driver doesn't need to steer much. The horse knows the route. It's done this route for years, stopping at each house without being told, waiting while the milkman carries bottles to the door, then moving on by itself to the next stop. His name is Walter. He's 28, and he drives a delivery wagon for a grocery wholesaler in Cleveland, Ohio. He's been doing this for 6 years. Before that, his father did it, with a different horse, on a slightly different route. Walter knows this city by smell and sound before he knows it by sight. He can tell which street he's on by the particular ring of hooves on that street's specific cobblestones, worn down differently after decades of the same horses taking the same routes. He arrives at the stable at 5. The horses, there are 11 at this stable, shared by 3 delivery drivers, are already awake, already shifting, already aware that the day has started. Walter's horse is named Duke. Walter has driven Duke for 4 years. 5:45 a.m. Harnessing. Harnessing a horse takes about 20 minutes if you do it right. There's a sequence: the collar first, then the hames, the traces, the bridle, checking everything twice, because a loose buckle at 30 miles an hour. Except nothing in 1905 goes 30 miles an hour. A loose buckle at 8 miles an hour, which is roughly top speed for a delivery wagon, is still dangerous. Horses spook, wagons tip, people get hurt. Walter checks Duke's shoes. This is part of the morning routine. Every horse needs its hooves checked daily and shod every 4 to 6 weeks by a farrier. An entire economy exists to support horse-powered transportation, and it employs an enormous number of people. When you imagine 1905, you have to imagine not just horses, but the thousands of jobs that exist purely to keep horses working. Feed suppliers, stable hands, veterinarians who specialize only in horses, manure removal crews, an actual job employing thousands of men in major cities, and the wagon and harness makers themselves. By 6 a.m., Walter and Duke are ready. The wagon is loaded the night before, crates of produce, dairy, dry goods for the grocery stores on his route. 6:30 a.m. The street. The street in 1905 is a shared space in a way that's hard to imagine later. There are no sidewalks reserved exclusively for pedestrians and streets reserved exclusively for vehicles. Or rather, there are sidewalks, but the street itself is everything at once. Horses and wagons, pedestrians walking in the road because it's often easier than the crowded sidewalk, pushcart vendors, children playing, yes, actually playing, in the street, because traffic moves at walking to trotting pace, and everyone is paying attention to everyone else. This requires a kind of constant, low-level awareness that doesn't exist later. Walter is watching for other wagons, streetcars on their tracks, which take priority, everyone knows, to get off the tracks. Pedestrians crossing wherever they want, children, dogs, and the occasional automobile. Because automobiles do exist in 1905. They're just rare, expensive, unreliable, and treated with a mixture of fascination and irritation. There are roughly 78,000 registered automobiles in the entire United States in 1905, compared to over 20 million horses used for transportation and work. When a car passes, people look. Horses sometimes spook, a real problem, since an automobile backfiring or simply being loud and unfamiliar can cause a horse to bolt, which is dangerous for everyone. Some cities have laws requiring automobiles to slow down or stop if a horse appears distressed. The automobile is, in 1905, the unusual thing on the street. Duke barely reacts anymore. He's seen a few. The first delivery. Walter's first stop is a small grocery on a corner, Hoffman's, run by a German immigrant family for the past 11 years. Mr. Hoffman is outside already, sweeping the sidewalk in front of his store, another constant task in 1905. Walter pulls up, sets the brake, a simple wooden or iron lever, and starts unloading. This is physical work. Crates of vegetables, sacks of flour, blocks of ice for the icebox in the back of the store. Hoffman's doesn't have refrigeration in the modern sense. He has an icebox, supplied by a separate ice delivery that comes through twice a week, cut from frozen lakes in winter and stored in massive insulated warehouses called ice houses until summer. The ice industry, yes, an entire industry, employs tens of thousands of people in 1905. Ice cutters, ice house workers, ice wagon drivers, and the people who maintain the ice houses themselves. Hoffman checks the delivery against his order, written the day before. No telephone confirmation. Walter's employer sent the order list with Walter, and Hoffman compares it to what's actually on the wagon. If something's missing, it gets noted, and the correction happens next time, or via a note sent back with Walter. While Walter unloads, Hoffman's daughter, 12 years old, before school, is filling the front display with the fresh produce. This is normal. Children work. Not in factories necessarily. Child labor laws are starting to restrict that. But in family businesses, on farms, in countless small ways. Work is simply part of childhood for most American children in 1905. 8 a.m. The factory whistle. A few blocks away, a different sound marks the hour. The factory whistle. Cleveland in 1905 is an industrial city. Steel, manufacturing, shipping on Lake Erie. Factory whistles are how time is communicated to large numbers of people simultaneously. Not everyone has a watch. Watches are expensive. A good pocket watch costs a week's wages or more for a factory worker. But everyone can hear the whistle. The 8 a.m. whistle means the workday has started. Workers who live close enough have walked. Workers who live farther have taken the streetcar. A 5-cent fare, which matters when you're earning $1.50 to $2.50 a day for 10 hours of factory work. Some workers have bicycles, which are genuinely popular and practical in 1905. Affordable, fast, and don't need feeding or stabling. 9:30 a.m. The Telegraph Office. Walter's second-to-last delivery is near the Telegraph Office, and this is where the speed of 1905 reveals something unexpected. Information moves fast, faster than people often assume. The telegraph network connects American cities instantly. A message from New York can reach Chicago in minutes. The Telegraph Office is busy. A businessman is sending a message about a shipment. A woman is sending news to family in another city. A birth, the telegraph operator can tell from the wording, something good. Telegrams cost money by the word, which is why telegram language developed its famously clipped style. Every word costs something, so you say only what's necessary.
11 a.m.
The street at midday. By 11, the street is at its busiest. This is when you see the full range of 1905 urban transportation simultaneously. Delivery wagons like Walter's, private carriages for wealthier residents, streetcars running their routes, bicycles weaving through traffic, an occasional automobile, and overwhelmingly, people walking. Walking is, for most people, the primary form of transportation. Most working-class Americans in 1905 live within walking distance of where they work, shop, and worship. The concept of a long daily commute is rare outside of streetcar suburbs, which do exist but are still a developing phenomenon. The street is loud. Iron-shod hooves on cobblestone or brick streets, a constant clatter. Wagon wheels, streetcar bells, vendors calling out what they're selling. Conversations happening at a volume necessary to be heard over all of this. Noise complaints about cities in 1905 are actually common. Newspapers run articles about urban noise as a problem, and some of it sounds remarkably similar to noise complaints a century later, just about different sources. And the smell remains constant. Horse waste, yes, but also coal smoke from thousands of chimneys and factory stacks. Food smells from restaurants and pushcarts, and in industrial cities like Cleveland, the specific smell of whatever the local industry produces. In this case, the metallic, sulfurous edge of steel manufacturing drifting from the mills near the lake. 1 p.m. Lunch. Walter eats lunch sitting on the wagon seat in front of his fourth delivery of the day. Lunch is bread, cheese, and an apple, wrapped in cloth, prepared by his wife that morning. He eats quickly, 15 minutes, while Duke rests and is given water from a public horse trough. These troughs are everywhere in American cities in 1905, maintained by the city or by charitable organizations specifically for the welfare of working horses. A horse that works all day needs water multiple times, and the city's infrastructure reflects this need as completely as later infrastructure will reflect the needs of automobiles. Nearby, a group of factory workers are eating their lunch on the factory steps. The noon whistle has sounded, marking their 30-minute break. 3 p.m., the afternoon run. The afternoon deliveries take Walter through a residential area. Streets lined with houses, mostly wood frame, some brick, with small front yards. This is where you see the domestic side of 1905 transportation. A woman is walking to the market with a basket. She'll make this trip almost daily, since ice boxes have limited capacity and many foods don't keep well, so daily or near daily shopping for fresh food is normal. Children are walking home from school. School days typically end around 3 or 4 p.m., and kids walk, sometimes considerable distances, in groups without adult supervision, because this is simply how children get to and from school for almost everyone. 6 p.m. Walter's last delivery and the way home. Walter's last delivery is back near the stable. Efficient route planning isn't new, even with horses. He unloads the last crates and then begins the process of unharnessing Duke, the reverse of the morning, taking about 15 minutes. Duke gets water, feed, and a brushing down. This is non-negotiable. A horse that isn't properly cared for becomes a horse that can't work. And a horse that can't work is, for someone like Walter's employer, a serious financial problem. 7 p.m. Evening. The evening in 1905 is quieter, but not silent. Gas lamps and increasingly electric streetlights in larger cities are being lit along main streets. Electric lighting exists in homes too, though it's not universal. Many households still use gas lighting or oil lamps, especially outside the wealthier neighborhoods. Walter's home has gas lighting in the main rooms. Dinner is the main meal of the day for many families. Walter's wife has been cooking on a coal or wood-burning stove, which also heats the kitchen and, in winter, much of the small house. After dinner, the family might read, or Walter might walk to a neighborhood tavern for a beer and conversation with other men from the area. A common evening activity, and taverns function as informal community centers in many working-class neighborhoods. Outside, the street sounds continue at lower volume. Fewer wagons, but still some traffic. Still the occasional streetcar. Still people walking. The city doesn't fully stop. It just slows. 10 p.m. Night. By 10, most working families are asleep. The workday starts early, and there's no reason to stay up late when you have to be up before dawn. The stable, though, isn't silent. The horses shift and settle. A night watchman, another job that exists specifically because of the value represented by the horses, wagons, and goods stored in commercial stables, makes rounds. Somewhere, a streetcar makes one of its last runs of the night. The gas lamps burn. The smell of the city, that constant, unremarkable smell of horse and coal smoke and industry, settles over everything, the same as it has every night and will continue to every night, for now. Nobody walking these streets in 1905 knows that within 20 years, this entire sensory world, the sound, the smell, the rhythm, the speed, the jobs, the infrastructure, all of it, will be almost completely gone. Replaced by something faster, cleaner in some ways, dirtier in others, and built around a machine that, on this particular Monday in 1905, exists in this city in numbers so small that most people have never ridden in one. The people living through this Monday had no idea they were standing at the exact center of one of the fastest transformations in human history. To them, it was just Monday. The horses were just horses. The smell was just the smell. That's usually how it works. You rarely know you're in the last ordinary day of something until it's already gone.